Welcome to the Good News Only radio show where you only hear good things about good people. My name is Tanya McIntyre, and as you may have guessed from the name of the program, I am passionate about positive media because I spent a very long time being immersed in negative media. Every day, in fact. I was a broadcast journalist, and I was a broadcast journalist long enough to know, over 20 years, that there's an agenda for mainstream media, and that agenda is to perpetuate what I like to call the FUD factor: fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Because when you think about this, when we keep hearing sensational headlines and embellished facts from mainstream media, what happens to us? Well, I think we actually start to believe that our world is full of terrorists and teetering on the brink of implosion at any moment. And then what are we more likely to do? I think we're probably more likely to go out and buy something to feel better, or maybe even take a drug or other substance to make us feel better. I really believe that we need positive messages to outweigh all of that mainstream media and advertising garbage that we're inundated with, constantly telling us that we're never enough, we're never smart enough, we're never attractive enough, and we are definitely never slim enough. And if you are slim, have you heard this? You're not the right kind of slim. So I encourage everyone I meet to take the diet that really works, a digital diet. Don't watch, read, or listen to news and feel how much your life improves. I'm so passionate about positive media, I founded The Good News Only back in 2010 because I wanted to provide a resource for people to watch, read, and hear all the good things about all the good people in the world. And as always, I have one of those good people joining us for this episode of The Good News Only radio show. Her name is Holly Hall. Holly is an astrologer, and she's also a psychic. She helps people transform their lives. Holly, welcome to the Good News Only radio show. Great to have you here.
Thank you, Tana. It's nice to be here.
Now, Holly, I had a little bit of time to kind of go around your social media posts and your website, and I noticed that you have a group called TLC Tribe. So I love, tribe is a very trendy term now. Everybody has a tribe. But your TLC Tribe, it actually stands for Transformational Life Coaching, which is what you do.
That's right.
Yeah. So if I were to join that group, what would happen in that group?
Basically, they're regular clients of mine that I talk to on a monthly basis. I coach them on a monthly basis using my psychic, psychology, and astrology. And it's a limited membership. And they're able to ask me questions throughout the week whenever they've got some issues around work or their children or their parents or whatever it might be, their neighbor, their dog. They can ask me. And then weekly we have lessons and sessions. I also have an online radio show they can call into and get some free advice throughout that week too. So it's basically a support group, and I use the astrology and psychology to support them through making decisions throughout the week.
I love that idea. How can we join? Where do we go?
Well, you go to holly.consulting. So it's www.holly.consulting. So rather than .com, it's .consulting. And you can go on there. It'll say TLC Tribe, and you can join there.
Very good. All right. So your psychic readings, how did you decide to do this? And you don't really decide, do you? Because
it happens.
It happens, right? So how did this evolve for you?
I love telling this story. So in my 20s, just a few years ago, I'm air quotes here, I was trying to discover my psychic because I come from a family of psychic, third generation. So my mother was tarot card, tea leaf reader. My grandmother was actually the last of the gypsies to settle in Hungary, and she also had psychic abilities. And so I'm a very practical, rational, down-to-earth, logical, intellectual. And so I was like, if I can't see it, feel it, touch it, it doesn't, right? So I wasn't getting these mirages of psychic visions. And a new friend of mine approached me in my 20s and said, you might be good at astrology. And I went, oh, that doesn't work. I said, what is that? He goes, the planets, and you read the planets and it tells the future. And I went, no, that doesn't work. He goes, I've got three books, and it was, you read them one after the other, The Only Way to Learn Astrology. And I think I read that first book, which was at the time, it was teaching you how to mathematically draw up a chart, which is a 2.5 page. If you do it on, it's 2.5 pages.
It's quite in depth.
So it's very in depth. It's very mathematical. And full of symbols. So it's like reading Chinese when people. So you have to be able to translate every single symbol, and which are planets and signs, the 12 zodiac signs that people are familiar with. And I read that book in a month and had it down pat. And probably within the next month, I read the other 2 books.
Wow.
It was like a language I was relearning. It's like I'd known it before, and I was just relearning it again. I picked it up so quickly.
You must have, because when someone talks to me about, the Venus and Mars and stuff, my eyes glaze over. It's like, no, seriously.
You and a lot of people. Yeah, it is. It's I think a lot of people know their general sun signs, but it's a lot more than that. You've got 10 planets and 2 the sun and our satellite moon, and then we've got some astrologers go even further and use called mini planets. They're not quite the size to be a planet yet. Chiron, Juno, there's a bunch of them. I don't always use those ones, but then there's the aspects, which means the combination of each planet, how far they are away from each other. If they create a square, which is the 45 degree, if it creates a trine, which is 90-degree distance, that's where all the math comes in. Anyways, all of that speaks a language to me, and I can see their soul when I look at their map.
Well, I was just going to say, what does the planet alignment have to do with what may be coming in my future? I
know logically it didn't make sense for me for the longest time, but it worked. I mean, if I did this plus this equaled an answer. And it wasn't just, that's where the psychology came into it. I was very hesitant I didn't even have the business for the first 10 years. I didn't tell most people I was an astrologer. I didn't try to launch myself as an astrologer because I had a hard time. A lot of people would see it as fortune telling, and I had a really big pet peeve around a fortune teller. I didn't want to be a fortune teller. I didn't want to tell people that they had no control over their future, because I believe they do. But what it does do is when you're looking at a chart, it tells me who you are, all the tools that you have as an individual, all the unique tools that you were born with. And some of them are challenging tools to use that need to be worked on a bit, and some of them come to you as a gift and are very easy. So I take a look at that on a deep psychological level, and then I go, you know what, here's a window of opportunity. It's asking you to use these 3 tools that you have to create some abundance in your career. And you can create that abundance in your career at this time, this window of opportunity, and these are the people that are going to come in. I'll see a man coming in. I'll see a woman coming in. Then my psychic ability kicks in. That's when it kicks in.
Well, yeah, it's kind of like a in-depth counseling with
the
psychic ability blended in there.
And sometimes people have blocks, and I can clearly see that. I'll have people say, well, like, I can't do that. And I'll be, why? Well, because emotionally, I don't like confrontation, which I can see that. And I go, then let's look back at your mom, because it stemmed from your mom. I see a situation happen when you were 8. I can see I can describe their parents to them to a T.
Wow.
So my job, my mission is to help them let go of those blocks so they make better decisions and choices when those windows of opportunities come.
So you really feel that genetically you were just inclined with this ability? You were.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think I've done it in another. I believe in reincarnation, so I believe I've done this in another life. Many lives.
It's funny you talk about reincarnation, because when I was in my 20s, you know how you're exploring who you are, you want to discover who you are, you're sowing your oats, so to speak, and the regression was just becoming a popular thing at that time. And this married couple was offering regression therapy. And I had met them at a cocktail party, and I said, yeah, I'd be very interested in trying that. Of course, I was very skeptical because I really didn't know what to believe. I was brought up a Roman Catholic, so I kind of I loved what Sinead O'Connor had said when she said, I'm a recovering Catholic, and that said, yes, that's exactly what I am. So I didn't really know where I fit. I was mostly agnostic, didn't really know what I believed. And then, of course, my dad, I'm currently writing a book in his honor called Philosopher Dad, because he loved to explore all possibilities.
You had a great dad.
He was fantastic.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And I think he and Wayne Dyer were definitely kindred souls, because when I discovered Wayne Dyer, I thought, oh my gosh, that's my father. You know, my father's advice. That's what I grew up with.
Right.
And I just, I was open-minded, like Wayne Dyer always says, keep your mind open to everything and attached to nothing. So that's what I did. I kind of went into this experience. It was kind of like a hypnosis, and I wasn't really sure at the time what I was experiencing. I had some very distinct experiences that were kind of like dream-like under hypnosis, but I didn't really know what it meant until years later, like 10 years later, when I was 30 and got married. And my husband, being from the UK, brought me back to the UK to meet his family. And as we were going over the Tower Bridge, I had this profound feeling come over me that I had been there before. And then I remembered 10 years prior, that regression, it was there.
It was the same.
It was exactly the same. That's where I had been.
Yeah.
It was just so, it gives me goosebumps even thinking about it. So,
I got goosebumps listening to you talk about it.
So I totally believe it, because when it was happening to me at the time, I had no idea what it was meaning to me. So just to give you a little bit of insight, you're thinking, well, what was it?
Yeah.
It was, all I could see was how I was dressed and how I was feeling.
Important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I knew I could describe to the person who had me under hypnosis that I was walking along a waterway. Didn't know where it was, but and I said it's a dirt walkway. There are gas lights. I'm not really sure of the year, but I do know that I'm a school teacher, and I'm feeling very sad because all I've ever wanted in my life was to be a mother, but that's never happened for me. Mm-hmm. So instead, I'm a school teacher, and my pupils really are my children. Mm-hmm. But I'm just overwhelmed with depression and feeling sad. I'm living in poverty, and I'm actually walking to my death. I'm going to walk off the end of this pier and swim until I can no longer swim anymore, and I'm just going to drown. And of course, I've carried into this lifetime a profound fear of water. I love being near water, but I don't want to be on it or in it. And I'm wondering if that's part of that too.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
So that experience, like, wow, that is...
Wow. I had a similar one when I was younger too, reoccurring dream. So I can relate. And I discovered factually that was a past life of mine, that reoccurring dream. So
I totally believe that.
I do.
And of course, I'm all about law of attraction, because it's a law of the universe. Everything is vibrating. And when we meet people, Holly, you know yourself. Within 30 seconds, you know if your vibrations are jiving.
That's right.
You either connect with that person or you don't.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that too, because some people you meet and think, oh my gosh, we must have known each other in a past life. Or
you repel.
Exactly.
Like, I don't even know you, and I can't wait to leave this room.
Exactly. It is that intense.
Yeah.
So I totally believe that. And like Dr. Wayne Dyer says, God rest his soul, he always says, we're all spiritual beings having a human experience. And this energy, well, scientists, have proven we can't destroy energy. And that's all we are, is just these vibrating blobs of energy. So definitely our soul continues on. Yeah,
absolutely. There's a physicist right now, like his name escapes me at the moment, but he's considered sort of he's radical in the industry. And he's talking a lot about the universe and quantum physics. And he's talking a lot about how a lot of the pictures and even the black holes that are in the universe, if you take a look at the connections and the energy, he will compare it to the brain, the heart, and the stomach, and that same sort of picture of the energy connecting looks very similar to, it looks exact. You put them beside each other, they looked exact energy. So I do believe that everything that's out in the universe, out in the planets, is directly connected to us, and we're directly connected. It's the same as we are to animals and the water and the moon. I mean, there's a reason the moon moves the tides. If we didn't have our moon, that's a whole other story, but if we didn't have our moon, our planet would probably die, because it controls a lot of our weather.
Right.
And it maintains a lot of our weather.
And we human beings, being 70% water,
right? Of
course, our whole biology is affected by the tides, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you work at any type of emergency wards, in the hospital, if you're a fireman or police officer, they'll all tell you that all the crazies come out on a
The
full moon.
Yes.
A lot more births on a full moon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Amazing. So speaking of that whole connection,
Right.
there was a question that we had just kind of glazed over, and you said, I'm not really sure if I want to answer that. So I'm going to throw it out there.
Exposed.
Because I believe that we are, in many ways, products of our environment.
Right.
And we are psycho-social beings, right? We are just longing for that connection, and everything is connected, mind, body, spirit. So our biology is directly connected to our psyche, our emotions, and that everything is directed and directly affected by our environment.
Right.
So I can explain how my environment kind of shaped who I am, but by the same token, my sister grew up in the same environment. We are completely different people. And if you talk to us, we're only 7 years apart, you would swear that we grew up in different households raised by a different father.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to know how you think your environment
Well, it's
affected.
interesting that you said that, because with a lot of my sessions, I do work with parents wanting to discuss their children. Why do I have two children that are completely different? First of all, they're completely different from each other, and neither of them are anything like me, and so they're struggling with that, the opposing characteristics. As a child myself, I don't know how easily I was affected by my environment. I know that I always wanted to know what made people tick. I was bullied a bit when I was younger. My parents separated when I was quite young, and I didn't understand why one person was a bully and another person was a genius and another person was caring and another person was funny. It's like, why are we all completely different from each other? So that's, I think, where my psychology started. I started being fascinated was what makes you tick. I think a part of it, too, with my parents separating, not to take it personally. So I had to do some inner work. And so I would always check in with myself. Well, why does this hurt you? Why does this bother you? Why is this upsetting you? I'd always kind of turn it on to myself. So I didn't take their personality, their struggles, their separation personally. I know growing up, because in my youth, I was not as exposed to commercialism, but that's when it started, right? It wasn't so much in your face like it is now,
Right.
or has been for the last 20-something years. So I think if I were to answer that question even now, I find the environment with media, I'm very much on the same page as you are. Media, consumerism is my biggest pet peeve. And I'm just as guilty. I mean, I don't live in a square box with nothing in it. I definitely try to live as minimalist as I can, and I think we all do. But it's almost not a choice,
Right.
because we're so exposed to it. And I think we're highly affected by the energy around that. If you're conscious about where does your food come from, where does your top come from, what kind of energy has it gone through from there to here?
And then when we see the advent of such cheap merchandise available to us, right? I mean, that's very tempting, but then nobody really contemplates the root of that, right? If we're not paying the value of something, then that's got consequences that run very, very deep, right? We've literally become a throwaway society because there's no value. There's no intrinsic value in anything anymore, materialistic stuff anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and all the people with the double-car garages and their 2 cars parked in the driveway because there's no room in the garage.
Yeah.
How do you describe insanity? And a multi-billion-dollar storage industry that we never had before.
Yeah.
Right? Now you're bringing up a young woman.
Yes.
How do you find things are different for her growing up than they were for you?
She's a shopaholic. It drives me crazy. I watch her. I'm like, she shops. Now, I brought her up to go to secondhand stores, and so she does that. But she goes and finds the Nikes and the Reeboks and the Lululemons, and then she sells them online. She's become quite an entrepreneur, but she probably has 1,000 things in her closet and wears the same 10 outfits every single day. And she knows it. She knows that she's sort of trapped in this whole buy. She makes her own money. She's gone to work since she was like 12 because she wanted an iPhone. And I said, you're not getting one till high school. So she's quite aware. She's quite aware that she is trapped in this consumer kind of world. And I think all I can do is I planted a seed, and she'll check in with herself. But I think a lot of the children, including her, are going to struggle when they first purchase their own homes, if they can.
If they can.
They won't be able to afford half of what we could afford.
Right. And well, there's a big co-housing movement on just because of that reason, right?
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it, because we need to get back to the tribe. We need to get back to the village. And unfortunately, I think it'll have to go to extremes.
Yeah.
We're not going to do it by choice. It's not human nature.
No.
When we're happy and everything's going fine, we don't make changes. Not most of us don't.
No. But it's so true, because social scientists have said that once our community, our tribe, goes beyond 150 people, we become desensitized. We really do need that commune, that village of 150 people to really feel connected.
Yep.
So we need to get back to that for sure. So I need to now say, how do you really think mainstream media messages are influencing the generation of young minds compared to how we were affected? Because I remember, the teen magazines really were my only outlet to be exposed to images that, were unrealistic, but it still programmed me to think that, I'll never look like that, so I'm inferior. Yeah. It still set that seed for me just by having that tangible magazine that I would look at weekly, right? And now kids are just inundated with thousands of these messages and images that are totally unattainable. Yeah. We're processing, I think the last I heard was 60 to 70,000 thoughts every day, and they're all negative. So that's
because it's doing exactly what you said. You're not skinny enough, you're not smart enough, you're not thin enough, you're not healthy enough. You need this for your health, you need that for your health. You've got, we got leaky gut syndrome, we've got, everything known to mankind, right? So we're all worried, and guilty too. We're all worried about all the different things that we need to do for our health. And at the same time, we want to look pretty, and we want to look young, and we want to be youthful. And our young children, the young ones are worse than off than we are, because I think as we mature, we're aging, so we naturally are like, I'd like to look the way I did in my 20s and 30s. But I've got a 19-year-old, just turned 19-year-old, and she's been worried about the way she's looked since she was 15, and she's gorgeous, and all her friends same. I'm not saying they're all like that. Other ones may be, she's a very strong personality, and she's a high achiever, so she's also worried about her education, and I want to have a really good job. And it's just so much worry that all of this presents, and it creates how high the rise has been in teenage suicide and teenage anxiety and stress, and my daughter being one of those people too. And it almost is mainstream in school. It's like, if you don't have a mental health problem in school, you're not in. Right. You're not in the flow.
Well, there are so many mental health issues now cropping up that didn't even exist.
Related to what? Not just psychology, but even the food that we're ingesting, and the energy in the air.
Is it because, do you think, we keep looking outside of ourselves for answers?
Yeah, I do like these little mini podcasts for my clients, and I did one that was focusing on exactly that. It's not that. I will have clients that come to me and go, help me make a choice. I don't have enough choices. I have no choice. This is what I got to do. And I'll show them all the different choices they actually have. But we get so narrowed in that this is what I have to have, and I have no other choice. And I said, the problem is we have too many choices. That's the problem now.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not that we don't have enough choice. We have way too many choices. It's not simplified.
I just went through that, actually. I had my nails done.
Yeah,
and
I was just looking how nice they are, because I like black.
They gave me this whole color chart to choose from. Actually, I think 3 different ones. There's like 50 different colors to choose from. And I said,
took you like 20 minutes to choose.
Too many choices. I said, you know what? Black. I like black. Let's just go with black. I don't know if that's a reflection on, the lack of color in my life, but I'm thinking,
black goes with everything.
Exactly.
I love black. I like black. I'm actually quite colorful today.
You are, yes.
My one friend says, is that all you wear is black? I like black.
This conversation works so well for radio.
It does, doesn't it?
So now that you are, you're kind of out there as a transformational coach, astrologer, psychic, I mean, that's huge.
Yeah, I was very lucky. I got endorsed by Dr. Shefali, who's a regular on Oprah, and she endorsed me, and I've been really busy ever since, on top of those people recommending me as well too, because I don't just, the first thing I do when I sit down with a client is I look at their chart and I start talking about their standouts, and I start talking about them. I had you wouldn't believe how many times I've had people say, like, are you in my house? Are you a fly on my wall? Do you have a camera in my house? Like, how do you know all this about me and my husband? And what's really cool is that I help validate who they are, because we're all trying too hard to be somebody that we're not. Yeah, no kidding. And that's the stress that causes us so much stress. And I validate, like, and we're so, when we have one talent, everything has a yin yang. So if you're a outgoing person who, pushes the envelope, and you pave your own road, and you make your own dreams come true, and you've got that eager energy about you, that's the same energy that's going to get frustrated, that's going to be short-tempered, that doesn't have a lot of patience. You have both. You can't have one without the other. But we misplace our characteristics sometimes. We put them in places that they shouldn't be. Yeah. And so, so I just work with people, and I go, you're exactly who, and they have tears. They walk away from my sessions happy with themselves.
Nice. Yeah. Now, we should tell our listeners, Dr. Shefali, she wrote Conscious Parenting. And she wrote Out of Control, which was for teenagers that we were just talking about. They've got some of the mental health issues. And she's been on Oprah many, many times. I did a reading for her before she got famous on Oprah. I told her she'd be famous on Oprah. and actually, she's coming to Toronto September 30th to do a whole conscious parenting workshop. And she's quite popular out there. If you've got a couple of kids, she's a go-to. Now, see, this podcast will live on in perpetuity. So that's September 30th, 2018.
Yes. Sorry. Yes.
So possibly by the time people are listening to this, that will have passed.
Yes.
But I'm sure the doctor's work will live on for a long time. Holly, what's your biggest challenge now as an entrepreneur?
Wow, that's a big, big question. I think I want to be more in working with groups, doing more speaking in front of larger groups. And because my work is pretty much one-on-one, I'm not like a psychic or a medium where I can just stand up and just pick somebody from the audience and say, your father's here and this is his name.
Right.
I need to be looking at somebody's chart, and I can quickly, on radio, I can do it really quickly. On my website, you can find where I do my radio, and I can do readings quite quickly. So I think my challenge is trying to figure out how I'm going to do that, do a larger platform right now.
Very good. How can people get in touch with you?
A couple of ways. So there's the website, which again is there's a couple. There's www.holly.consulting rather than .com.
So that's HOLLY consulting.
And then there's Astro, so it's ASTRO, Holly.com. That'll take you to the same website.
Perfect.
And then Facebook is Holly Consulting 8.
Excellent.
The number 8.
And now when you're doing your radio show, is that live calling? Can people actually
live calling. It's Blog Talk Radio. You can find it on my website.
Excellent. Well, we have just been yakking here for 30 minutes almost.
It feels like 5.
I know. Amazing. Thank you so much.
It.
I love what you do, Holly. Thanks so much, and keep up the great work.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Good News Only radio show. And you know what I'm all about, right? Encouraging you to be the gatekeeper of your mind, because our minds are like gardens, right? We plant the seeds and they grow when they are nurtured. That's the key. We need to nurture, because if we're not tending that garden, what happens? The weeds creep in and they take over. And those weeds are all that negativity that we let seep into our minds very often without us even realizing it. Things like mainstream media and advertising messages that keep telling us we're never good enough until we go out and buy something to make us feel better. We can even feel the effects of negative song lyrics, for heaven's sakes, and even negative friends and relatives. Oh, man, yes, sometimes we have to love people from a distance, right? So just be aware of all that stuff you're absorbing into your mind, your garden. Are you sowing good seeds? Are you tending all those weeds? Take the diet that really works. You can get that digital media fast on my website, www.thegoodnewsonly.com. Thanks so much for listening. My wish for you is to always live well, laugh often, love always, be mindful, and stay positive.